Hey, where am I? Where are you? I haven't seen you in so long, Miss Linda
Oh.
Kenny Baden. Michael
Well,
Bryant here.
this is wait, I thought your name was Michelle Briand
Well,
because you are our European correspondent. You were just in Paris. If you're not a member, you missed out on getting the early travelogues of Justice. Where are you with Michelle Briand from Justice Serve TV? But Michael Bryant, while you were away, okay, while you were away, there was a little trial going on called YSL with Yak Gotti, Shannon Stillwell, and our friend Doug Weinstein. Well, he's not on trial. He's the lawyer for Yak Gotti. Guess what? The jury today in the deliberations, second day, they came back after 2.5 hours yesterday, came in today, and they had questions and questions, and they wanted to see the videos, some videos. What were they, Michael Bryant? Do you know from being out there in the field?
it's a whole different time zone here, and strangely, people are not asking me questions about YSL while I'm wandering around here in various parts of Europe. But I know that video of the cars. Was it one car? Was it two different
Yeah,
cars? Was it
well,
the
yeah,
same
they
car? Was Yak Gotti jumping around between cars? That video seemed to be of interest to the jury.
well, before we get to the video, show me your watch. You wear your watch tonight?
You
Your
mean
watch
the
that you
$40 Timex?
Yeah, the
Yes,
one
I
that you
have that
talked on
on.
our travel log with pickpockets in
That's right.
Paris, yeah,
Pickpockets are not
Paris,
interested
Paris,
in this
and
watch.
that. Well, the jury's first question was about Mr. Weinstein, about Doug, and no one can pronounce this watch. The jury's first question, and thank you, Joseph Papp, who was in that courtroom reporting, and then we were able to follow your report because the camera actually, the judge started without getting the cameras set up there. They're wondering if the watch that belonged to Kendrick and Love, what the and if the attorney Doug Weinstein said it was Yak Gotti, Kendrick, Diamante Kendrick's watch, his watch. So the question is, did Doug Weinstein admit that it was his watch under the theory that Diamante Kendrick lived at the house or the residence of Jeffrey Williams, and that when the police came in and he was supposedly outside in the back. Remember, there's no drug charges against him for that. He's outside in the back. That the watch that was inside, that was left, was actually belonged to his. The Doug that was basically the intent of the question. And Doug said, "No, I didn't. I don't think I said, Your Honor, his. And if I did, it was a mistake. I would have said the watch. I was talking about the watch." So. There was a whole kerfuffle, and it wasn't with everybody in the courtroom. It was with Ms. Love, who was in the back, and she was back today, Michael Bryant, and
I
she's
saw
like,
her. Yeah.
you can
Yeah,
Google
she
it and
is.
find it, because she wanted to quite get into the picture and say that no, yes, he did, and then she asked the court to tell them, even if Doug said it was the watch, that what the attorneys say are not evidence. So the jury was brought back in, and they were that question was answered. And interestingly enough, no one in the courtroom, even though you've been to Paris now, can pronounce the Richard Mille watch. Even the judge said about the Richard Mille watch, Mr. Weinstein did not say his, he said the. But anything the attorneys say is not evidence, and you're not to take it as evidence, blah, blah, blah. But I thought it was interesting because when the jury started answering these questions, and I want to know what our viewers think, they talked about Diamante Kendrick being Yak. They didn't say Yak Gotti. They said Yak. Yak.
Hmm.
Michelle, Michael,
Hmm.
all of our viewers, if we, sometimes we talk to you by your first names because we kind of know you. But that kind of indicated to me one or two can go either way. Either Yak, because Doug would always call him Diamante, right? Kendrick or Mr. Kendrick. So maybe they're using his gang name, or they're calling him Yak because hey, they're on a first name basis with you. So what do you think, Michael Bryant,
Yeah,
Michelle?
you're right. I mean, it could be that they're so comfortable after a year plus sitting there watching Yak that they just feel comfortable, like they know the dude. It seems to me if you're thinking negatively about somebody, you don't do so and call them by their first name. You're more formal, and then maybe you get more derogatory. But I don't think you're just as casual and friendly as it seems to say Yak this, Yak that. Just that's common sense.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I was like, and also the first question out of the box is Mr. Weinstein, our friend Doug. The first question out of the box, his name gets mentioned, so he must have had some effect. They were thinking about that. And so my second question then to you and our viewers is, because they were looking at Yak Gotti, Diamante Kendrick's charges here, and asking questions about Doug's closing, do you think they are taking or viewing the indictment by personage, in other words, dealing with Yak Gotti first, and then charges, or do you think they're going just through the indictment here? I have a view on it, but I want to hear what your view is.
Here's my professional opinion. I have no clue. I mean, you've been through this before, whether it's your own case, and only a trial attorney who's been sitting in the position that Doug and Max are now knows what this feels like. And it ain't a good feeling. It's a helpless feeling. But you're second guessing, you're triple guessing, you're quadruple guessing what the jury may or may not be thinking by what we see, the little nugget of information we get from them. Well, what does that mean? Maybe it means this. And that's fun. We're humans. That's what we enjoy doing, is this kind of speculation. But the fact is, none of us know a damn thing. So, yeah. Having said that, most people are methodical, right? You don't just scattergun, like, let's take a look at page 4 and then let's circle back to page 1 and then we'll go. No, they kind of work through things methodically. But is it possible that they'd already gone through once, answered all the questions they needed as they related to Shannon Stillwell, and then circled back, had questions relating to Yak Gotti? We don't know. So I'm not taking a ton from that. I do like this, though, that they seem to be thorough. Okay. And I think, I saw some post about somebody suggesting, hey, this thing's been on trial for a year and there's been this. It's insane to think they come back, in the day and a half that they've had the case. Well, maybe some people aren't old enough to remember 1995 and O.J. Simpson. 150 witnesses, 8 months. How long did it take to come to a decision in that case? Do you remember? Less than 4 hours. So don't give me that crap about, oh, that's crazy, it took so long. And get over yourself,
somebody
man.
Somebody doesn't know what they're talking about. You could actually come back. I wouldn't have been surprised if they came back with a verdict today, because they're honed in on what they want right now already. You saw that. That's on.
By the way,
Mixed Chick said that's not his gang name. He got Yak from playing football, but that's what the state says is his gang name, Yak Gotti. That's what the state is calling, and that because of John Gotti, you got the Gotti part of it, so you have to put them together. So
and I asked his mom that. I said, where'd the Yak Gotti come from when I was down there? And I said, is it Gotti, like, New York, family? And she just kind of smiled, suggested maybe it was, and wasn't really confirming it, but I think it's common knowledge. It wasn't just a stray name that he grabbed.
Yeah, so that's it. But I also had a view about that. First of all, I do, as I told you all, that there's two different kinds of juries. There's juries that go in there and say, okay, what's your feeling about all this, right? And they come right out and come to a verdict. And other ones who want to see for themselves or have some questions that they want to answer. And so there's two different kind of jurors. And this may be a mix of two different kind of jurors, but they were smart and they honed in. Now, someone I read said, well, they clearly disregarded the RICO count. No. What they're doing, in my opinion, is going to the different charges that may form the basis of RICO. Because if they don't find anyone's guilty of those charges, there is no RICO. Right, Michael?
Yeah, you have to have those overt acts. And remember, some of the overt acts may be crimes in and of themselves, but because they weren't charged properly in terms of the statute of limitations, then they don't stand alone. They're only useful to create the overt acts needed to get the RICO conviction.
Yeah. So that was a really interesting beginning, I think. And by the way, Madeira Beach Care River, my sister's doing well. She's in rehab right now, and she'll be home on Friday, a little after Thanksgiving. But thank you for asking. That's a very nice of you. And everyone's human, even people in the trial. I try to remind everybody that the lawyers have been on trial there for now, over a year, plus the jury selection, the two lawyers that are left. And I can't imagine what it's doing to the family, including coming up to Thanksgiving when you have this over you, including the defendants, families and all.
And I only hope that that they take a breath if they can and enjoy this weekend, the time with the families, and to the degree they can, set this crap aside. Just try to take a breath. I watched Doug's post. He did a post with, I believe, one of his family members, daughter perhaps, talking about, he actually sounded almost relieved, that now they can kind of turn their attention to some family activities with the holiday. And then, Monday's another day at work.
Okay, so Mixed Chick says, question, how can they say Thug was a leader, but Viverito or Burrito, as she was called, I'm not sure that's really good, but we even hashtagged her once that YSL didn't have a ranking like other gangs, because, that I think they were saying that because it wasn't like other gangs. They came up with this new hybrid gang, Michael.
Yeah. Come one, come all. Doesn't matter. Bloods, Crips, old, new, young, wannabes. Come on in. It's like what is it, Boys Town of gangs? It just seems so ridiculous, because if you think of the core concept of a gang, it has some esprit de corps. It has, you have to earn your stripes and earn the respect of the other gang members to be taken. It isn't just come one, come all. I mean, it makes no sense.
It makes no sense. So we started with our friend Doug, right? And then he had to be like, oh my gosh, starting with me. I can't imagine how he felt about that. But then we went, and by the way, Joseph Papp reported that there was a funny moment in the court when we did get to see that one of the jurors' phones was ringing, and the deputies, like if it had been us, they'd be like pouncing, ready to go to jail, right? And instead it was one of the jurors' phones, which begs the question: the jurors are having phones ringing in deliberations?
I know they were. I understand they were in a kind of a box that they'd been collected in a box. The box might have been more in the courtroom rather than in the deliberations room. I don't think they're going to allow the phones in the deliberations. No.
Okay. Anyhow, that's kind of that. I thought that was kind of a funny little side that we didn't get to see. Okay, so then they went.
Hey, Linda,
on.
I have to tell you, I'm losing you off and on. I don't know if it's a jiggling mic or something, but I want to throw that out there.
How's our viewers? Can you hear me, or is my mic doing that for all of you? Okay, let me know, because if not, I'm going to unplug my brand new mic that I just bought.
Save the receipt on that microphone.
I
can't tell. It just, I mean, you're in and out. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay, well,
Dizzy,
our producer, says
now you're in.
Sounds fine to her. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Sam by Ruby Coco said closed captions changed Viverito to burrito, and thus it took off. That's really funny, because when we posted about it being burrito finishes, I was like, oh dear, somebody's going to say we're not politically correct. Everyone sounds fine on their end, Michael. So I think the problem's on your end.
All right.
Brilliant.
Must be Prague.
It must be Prague. Okay, so then there was a video. Then they wanted, this was the big thing. They wanted the video of the Texaco station, and they wanted all the views of the Texaco station of Yak getting into the car. Because remember, when the story came out, and then there was a question, because this was when Yak got into the car at the Texaco station, right? And so. What did that mean? Did that mean they didn't trust the state? Did that mean they were trying to see the car? Well, what happened was, Michael, it appeared to us, and I quote, I was looking at some of the viewers and some of the chatters on X Twitter, as I'll call it, and there was San Fettuccine who took a screenshot of the car that the state had said, and I'm going to put it up here, the screenshot of the car that the state had said drove past the gas station, that they said was actually the car no, I have a Sennheiser, Brooklyn Mac, that they said that was the car that, and it was an Apogee before, but the Apogee also broke, but I digress a lot. All right. That was a car that was in the CCTV, the closed camera television footage that supposedly Yak got into, then that was used in the homicide, right? And then transpose, and that is my dog to be or not to be, who's weighing in here. Transpose, put a picture of the car that Yak got into, and you'll see it right there. You see him getting in, right? It's a white car. So what the state did, though, was a little underhanded, I thought initially, because Ms. Love, who was back in the courtroom and was telling the jurors what to put on, or what telling her seatmate what to put on, actually showed videos of Yak going into the store, getting out of the car. They didn't want to see that. They wanted to see what car he got into. And there were 4 views of that. And there you have one of the posts, right? There were 4 views of that. They wanted to see the car he got into. And so the car he got into was this car, and it didn't match the grille of an Infiniti 90. Remember, Jeffrey Williams supposedly rented an Infiniti 90, Infiniti, it doesn't matter what it is, And that's part of the overt acts, part of the conspiracy for the RICO, for the murder. Patrick Taylor, do lawyers get nervous like those of us waiting for 12 to decide? Absolutely. There is nothing you can do. The worst feeling, and Michael Bryan will tell you, is after you're sitting there and the judge charges the jury and they go wandering out and you have to like stay around or stay in your hotel room and wait to get the call. You don't need. That's the
I'm
best
getting
time.
agita just thinking about it.
It's worse.
I called there's this magic 8 seconds. Okay, that's the time after you've sat down you're done with your argument. There's nothing else you can do. You have about 8 seconds of, and then the panic and all of the rest of the stuff sets in as you know you're now waiting for a verdict you have no longer any control over. So yeah, this is as tough as it gets this time right now.
That's right. And then, yes, with the Q50 Brooklyn. So it's clear that if that was the car that San Fettuccini picked up and posted about, to me, it looked like that was a silver car, but the state was saying it's a white car and it was then involved in murder. It's not the car that Yak Gotti got into. And so they're looking for something, right? They're looking, there you see, the jury's looking to see, I guess, is there a sunroof? Is there not a sunroof? Did the Q50 have a sunroof? Did it not have a sunroof? Did he get into the car? Did he not get into the car? They're looking for something very specific. What do you all think it is? I mean, I want to know what we have chatters right now. We have 240 chatters. What do you all think it is that the jury is absolutely looking for at all? Can you tell me? Because I have all of these theories. Michael Bryan, let's start with you.
Here's one of my theories. We never know when these kinds of questions come up, whether it's one person that needs to understand what happened or be convinced or be disabused of something that the others think they're wrong about, or is it everybody's kind of on the same page and they want to see this for confirmation? We don't know. We have no idea. But clearly there is some concern on some level by one or more of the jurors that they get this car situation correct. Whether the state was trying to mislead them or not, I do like that they're taking the time to look at these things critically for whatever reason, whether it's to convince one juror that they're wrong, to convince most of them that the DA was maybe trying to massage the evidence. For whatever reason, they're not taking it at face value. They're digging back in again. I think that's great.
Yeah, no. So Ronger, we didn't forget about the watch. I think the state was the state was forgetting about the watch. I remember there was one missing. There was two of them there, but one was missing. And who was the last person that held it? Burrito.
Vivarito.
I have to Vivarito. Investigative Vivarito. And that was on camera. So yeah, no, we just didn't forget about it. But the state may have just forgotten about it. The jury certainly didn't forget about it because it was numero uno on their questions. Okay, so the state did. The jurors didn't forget about it. And Michael, what is the most important thing you have as a lawyer representing either the state or the defendant when you are talking to a jury?
What is the most important thing you have?
Right. What's the most important you have? You as a lawyer, what is your most important asset to a jury?
Oh, I think it's just to relate to them, to be personable, to tell them a story that they can connect with. That's right. I don't care what the case is.
And your credibility, right?
Oh, so of course.
Of course. So yes, the lawyers get nervous. I think we're so I'm nervous, and I'm not even trying this case. I'm so nervous because I think, and the reason why I'm nervous may have nothing to do with this case. I think there was such an overreach by this office in what they charge and how they charge, even if the law allows it, that people could get swept into this, being guilty, being a member of a gang for marijuana sales or whatever, or for a murder that somebody else has already pleaded guilty to. That's been committed and who's on trial. I think that it's such overreaching. And the RICO statute for criminal statutes was never intended for that. It was never intended for this type of overuse. And you force people to plead guilty even if they're not. And you make have the juries compromise even if they shouldn't, because you just look at it and say, what do you do when you go in, Michael Bryan? I mean, everyone wants to know. Mixed Chick says, I think they want to know if Yak Gotti got into the car. There are 2 gas stations and 2 people that have lost their lives. Texaco Infinity involved with the nut, the BP, 2 white cars linked to drinks. So you're right. That's an issue. But they wanted to see. They didn't specify which video they wanted to see. They just
and there's some suggestion. There was another video, and if it happened, a car switcheroo in the back part of the gas station.
Right.
And I believe the evidence suggested there were cameras back there, but we never saw any video from something happening back there, if indeed it did happen.
Right. All we saw was the nut. All we saw was the actual nut homicide, but we didn't actually see any cameras from. And that was from a barber shop. That was from a barber shop. That was not from
the Texaco.
Yeah, the Texaco or the BP. Everyone's weighing in on this one. Okay. Raynette, none of the cars defendants were driving look like the cars involved in the shootings. The prosecution presents like they want to pin the crimes on anyone, even the other 12 people of the case. So there you go. By the way, this is the barber shop. This is a screenshot. Here we go. This is interesting. This is the actual shooting, right? And that's from the barber shop.
And I will tell you, the barbershop gets a bad rap here because it really was not at the barbershop. I went down there and checked that out. It's in this parking space next to the barbershop. The barbershop took a couple of stray bullets, but they were not connected in any way. It just so happened that this parking spot was right next to the barber shop.
Yeah, and can you say what kind of car that was? I can't tell what any of these cars are. But
let's talk about cars and videos then. Let's talk about the sequence of events with the cars approaching the intersection. Remember, the Shannon Stillwell car comes up.
Right.
I know Max Shart said you could see him pump the brakes 3 times. The victim in that shooting, but the video is far from clear. I mean, it shows a car or 2 and then 3 at the intersection. It shows a car approaching. But unless you're told, oh, by the way, that's so-and-so's car and that's so-and-so's car, and then you can see what happens here. I'm telling you, it's very difficult to see what is happening there or what is not happening there or who is shooting whom, if anybody. It's really not that helpful.
No, I agree. I even with the issue of the whole issue of the muzzle flash and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm not sure you can see anything in that. And then we have to remember on all this, when you have these nighttime vision cameras, right? Anything that is white comes out darker, and anything darker comes out whiter. So, when they say, well, that's a white car, that may not really be a white car that goes past. It may be a darker car that then becomes whiter in the night vision, which no one really seemed to talk about. But anyone who has a camera, all right, you kind of know that, don't you? Yeah, you're familiar with that. So that was the second thing. And then the jury came out loaded for bear again, right? They came out loaded for bear again because then they wanted to have questions regarding, and somebody said it was counts 58, 59, and 61. They wanted to know if there was intent, what they needed to prove with intent to distribute. And the judge gave them a recharge on whatever counts. And there was some confusion about whether it was 57, 61. And Michael, I know we're going to bring up the indictment. You're going to talk about that a little bit with Yak Gotti's indictment. But there was an intent to distribute drugs. That's count 58. Possession of marijuana with intent to distribute. Then there was a partial directed verdict on count 61 related to codeine and cocaine, but that was possession of a firearm also during a commission of a felony. And this is we did a little primer with Yak Gotti, our producer Jen, who's fabulous, did, and so they wanted to know what did they have to find with regard to intent. What did that mean? So the judge reread the charge. Michael. Exactly,
but here's the tricky part. Intent can be established in a number of ways. I intended to pick up this pen. That was express intent, right? You're not going to find that in most crimes. You're not going to find express intent. It's either going to be implied or inferred somehow. They're looking for, whether they know it or not, does it mean that there is intent to sell, in this case, some drugs, if there's a large quantity of drugs, something that the prosecution might establish is more than you would need for personal use. I'm not so sure that was made very clear. What a shock by the prosecution during the course of this case. You could infer intent to sell by just having the massive quantity of drugs that you couldn't use yourself.
But what about the fact if it's somebody else's drugs, can I be liable?
Of course.
Somebody has somebody has a massive amount of drugs. I don't know they have drugs, but the other person has the intent to sell, and I'm not charged with the conspiracy of intent to possess to sell because I'm part of this gang. Is the jury stuck with that?
Well, I don't think, you don't even get, in my opinion, to the intent question unless you get to, I'll use this word possession in a broader sense, meaning within your home, within your car, not necessarily on your person. I mean, if you don't establish that connection, then how do you get to intent? I don't even know how you get there. There was a very important point made by Doug Weinstein, and this is what helped him get his Yak Gotti partial directed verdict, and it had to do with the weapons and drug charges and the possession issue. And he made it very clear with Detective Inspector Viverito that the drugs in Jeffrey Williams' home were never, I think he even used the phrase, within arm's length of Yak Gotti. And when the inspector admitted that, well, where do you go with that if you're the prosecution? If you have no evidence that the contraband, in this case the drugs or the weapons that were in Jeffrey Williams' home, were within arm's reach of your client, well, that's why those directed verdicts were granted. We talked about this before they were presented, and of course, we know that they're very seldom granted. I'm sure Doug knew that it was a long shot, but what the hell? And we also talked about how you don't necessarily have to win the entire enchilada. You can have some chips, some beans, some rice, and that's what he did. He won on the chips and the beans and the rice, not the whole enchilada. And so moving forward with fewer counts is a massive victory. It shouldn't be appreciated what he was able to do there.
Yeah, and also it sounds to me like the jurors are really held up on this whole idea of intent, that it has to be fair, right? Well, somebody else has the intent to sell and you're sitting next to them in the car. Does that mean you have the intent? I'm using that as that's
a perfect example of implied intent, but that's a reach, man. And are you comfortable with that? Would you be comfortable coming to that conclusion?
After a year?
In the car with the guy who was doing it, so therefore you had the intent as well.
And yet the prosecutors indict on that all the time, and people get convicted on that all the time. And I'm not sure in a case as serious as this, I think that's such little crap. I mean, that's what you're using for a RICO count. That's how you want to get Yak Gotti on that. And also, to me, I mean, I'm sorry, give it up with the weed, okay? I mean, just give it up. Who's the biggest seller of weed these days? It's like states. Right, when they have medical marijuana and they grant licenses and all that kind of stuff. Let's just give it up, Georgia. I mean, you paid Fonnie Willis's boyfriend how much? $1 million to prosecute in another case, and you're worried about whether these guys sold weed to finance a gang. To me, I'd be like a terrible juror because I wouldn't follow the law. I follow fairness.
Yes, we'd like to thank and excuse Ms. Linda Kenny Baden. Yes.
So I had never got on a jury. Do you know anything about the law? Yeah, would you like me to tell you? And 5 hours later, they're still sitting there. I never get on a jury. Never. But I think the jurors are bothered here by the fairness. I really do.
I do too.
And I think they've gotten to the longer a trial goes on, the more, what shall I say, the better it is for a defendant, because they get to know the defendant every single day. When they first start, they're just gang members who are indicted, right? But they get to see their interaction with their lawyer. And that helps if they see somebody who is personable and respectful and all. And you even saw this week, Linda's juror number 56, times 10. I mean, juror 56 times 10. How'd you go? But I think they saw it this week, even with the judge. Remember, Doug Weinstein, sometime this week, and you all know this, so our viewers who are watching this, said, look, Mr. Kendrick is being awakened in the jail cell at 2 o'clock in the morning to be transported for a 10 o'clock trial. Your Honor, could you talk to somebody and let him sleep a little bit longer? And so she said yes. I mean, judges I know would say no, it's the sheriff's purview or whatever. Right. And then the next day she asked him, did they let you sleep today? And he said yes. And she smiled and said, yeah. She was like, so she looked so like she was his mother, worried about him. And yet, while the jurors don't see that, the way that she's now acting in that courtroom after being with these defendants and the lawyers, who, by the way, she praised Doug Weinstein for his candor with the court, his view of candor with the court. And that's a direct dig at who. Mm-hmm. I won't say the name. Okay. Or should I say the name? Okay. Love.
You mean Adrian Love? Is that what you mean?
Yes. Love. Right.
The initials are Adrian Love.
Yeah.
So, she's seen this thing unfold. She gets it. She can't show her bias anymore. And she has a couple of times, I think, but she can't really lay it out there. And certainly she hasn't done it in front of the jury. But speaking of bias and speaking of juries, we got the guy on the jury who said, Judge, I'm biased. I can't believe the state is bungling this case and taking as long to screw it up as they have been. I can't get over that. You're on the jury. You're staying. You're good.
And I think, and somebody's reporting, and we don't know if it's true. So we'll find out the next couple of days that he's the foreperson. We don't know.
Yeah, I don't think that's confirmed, but that would be quite the hammer if it were the fact that this guy who has very obvious bias is the foreperson. I don't know.
No, Renette it's a guy though. Yes, we know that. Renette has a question for you because you and I have spoken about this, and I know you have a lot of thoughts on this. Please explain to the chat the recidivism, blah, 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 blah. Exactly. Recidivism involved for the defendants. Yes, you did. You used the right word, recidivism, in terms of the fact that if they get convicted, like if Yak Gotti gets convicted because he's already been in federal prison or still will get convicted.
I mean, the three strikes rule obviously is a perfect example of how that is used as a major weapon against repeat offenders. Recidivism usually is looked at as when somebody gets out of jail or out of prison and they go back to a life of crime, as opposed to just having a series of crimes for which they are then called into court. In theory, that's, we had mixed defendants in this case, some with no record, Jeffrey Williams, and some with, kind of a history. So I'm not sure if the question relates to are they more or less likely to be repeat offenders if they're in the system that now exists, or something related to that?
Well, how about in terms of sentencing? My recollection is Doug said that if his client gets nicked because he has a prior sentence that he served in federal prison, that the sentence for him here would be greater. That was my recollection. And
that would be normal. Yeah, that would be normal. Yeah.
And thank you all.
Ultimately, it's a three strikes analysis where the punishment is increased, and the theory is, mistake once, not so bright twice. We're going to stick it to you the third time.
Right, and the state does mention that, I think, in the indictment and stuff like that. So that's how the recidivism plays in here, or repeat offender. Some states call it, or whatever. And so
it can be, it can be a weapon to extract a plea out of somebody too.
Oh yeah. That's right. It could be, and that's the danger here, because the danger is if you don't take a plea. And Jeffrey Williams found this out, right? That's one of the reasons that will factor into why he did it. You get nicked on one minor charge, then that could lead to a RICO enhancement here, and off you go, and away you go, and goodbye. You don't have to worry about daylight saving time for the rest of your life, because you're not seeing the outside very often. So it really is an issue in the criminal justice system, but more so here because of the way this case has been presented. Now, Michael Bryant, Ms. Love was back in the courtroom today. All right.
I noticed that she was floating around, but she was in the back row for the most part, right?
Oh, but she's dealing with the playbacks, and she's making she's clearly getting noticed, right? There's no doubt she's getting noticed, and she had to be getting noticed by everybody in that courtroom that she's back. But, even though and I guess they had to bring her back because she tried part of the case. It wouldn't look good for the state if they didn't have her sitting there.
It's still, the jury's got to be thinking weird things, like she disappeared for a while. She wasn't in court at all. Other people took over. She didn't do any of the closing. And it's just got to if I'm on the jury, I'm thinking, did she do something wrong? Or does she not care anymore? And if she doesn't care, why should I care? I just think it's an odd presentation.
It is odd. So I want to go back one day, and I'm going to ask all of our chatters right now. We have 429 chatters in the chat room. I want to go back one day. Okay. Well, maybe 2 days. Okay. I always open when I open to a jury in black, and I always close to a jury in red. All right. Because it's a date to begin with, then I'm going to be really follow up to at the end when I'm sure the jury is with me. However, the whole state, all the women were in red when closings began. The color, what colors? Let's see, blood colors. Okay. They were in red. Everybody was in red. Now, the state spent the whole time telling us that if people wore colors like red, they were in a gang, right? That they were in a gang. Are they saying they're part of a gang where they try to prove their point, or they're just being ridiculous here? Or are they the gang that's going to bring down the other side, the other group? I mean, who thought of that is what I want to know, Michael Bryant.
Yeah, I mean, I'm shocked. I shouldn't be any more shocked at the things they do or why. I'm just guessing that they thought this would look cool, be a united front, and they're just not sharp enough to carry the logic through to the fact they've made arguments for months about similar dress, meaning you're gang related, and Doug and Max both made their points. I think Doug even mentioned his co-counsel for Gotti was in red, but not with Doug. They weren't both in red, and he had to say, she comes into this mess. She's now connected to the prosecution. I guess they're all in the same gang. I'm just stunned by some of the dumb things they do. It's just dumb.
Yeah, but next time we have Doug on, though, we will show a picture of him because he did TikToks and he closed wearing green glasses and a green tie. Remember the Slime's colors, YSL's colors supposed to be green, just like the exact same colors I would point out to you all that Justice Serve TV has. These are our colors. We're a gang, Michael Bryant. Our colors are green. And are we part of the YSL gang? Are they going to come after us next because we have the same colors as YSL, as Doug? I think we're doing it because, hey, I thought it was an interesting thing to do. Green as in money, which we don't make, by the way, off this switch. But the red was just in your face, Michael Bryant.
Yeah, and it's a sharp look. I get it, but in light of this case, the arguments being made, it was just dumb. It just made no sense at all. And it's almost like they don't even consider what the jury might think of them on that level. They're either so arrogant or they just don't get it that they wouldn't consciously have a conversation about it. Do you think it's a good idea? If we both are wearing red, is that? Yeah, that's a great idea. I just, are they not having those conversations?
I don't get it. But here's the danger. We have that. We're talking about the indictment. We had some directed verdicts, as you know, okay, on the indictment. And when we do a final wrap-up show on this, we'll post it all. But we do have, again, our little cheat sheet, right? I would say that Jennifer was kind enough to put up for everybody, right? We have the Racketeering Act, that's count one. And when we have the murder, that's of Donovan Thomas, that's count two. So it starts pretty heavy. We have the criminal street gang participation, count 57. Now, you and I have also spoken about this. I kind of think these guys were in a gang. But does that mean that I think they should be convicted of anything here? But if you're a juror, and I want to hear what you all think out there chatting, do you think that Shannon and Yak are in the gang, or in the YSL gang? And if they are, how do you get out of not convicting them of participation in a street gang, but you really just think they were kind of like little cogs at the end that didn't do the homicides or whatever like that? Where do you draw the distinction? And is there a danger that they could get convicted of that because of that?
Oh, you're asking me?
Let me start with you first. I'm actually asking all of our viewers because I noticed they said the men all wore red ties. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
You have to look at each of the underlying acts, right? You can't get to this whole gang thing unless you find some underlying acts that they had committed as a, quote, gang. I see both these guys more as music wannabes, and we know that they'd contributed to some of the music from Jeffrey Williams, and I just don't see the next connection. Now, I'm not saying I'm naive enough to think that these guys are squeaky clean and they've never done anything in their lives. That's not the standard. That's not the burden that the prosecution has. I need to see proof beyond a reasonable doubt that X happened, whether it's an overt act or an underlying crime, something that allows the RICO statute to kick in. And I don't see that. Again, I'm not saying there isn't some evidence somewhere of some wrongdoing, but I don't care. If it's not in this trial against these defendants, then what are you wasting my time for? I just don't think I've seen what I would need to see as a juror to find those predicate acts that lead to the RICO conviction.
Proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, the jury did come out with another question related to counts 57 and all. They said that 57, 61, 58, where are my notes? 57, 58, 59, 61. Do they have to take these in as a whole? Because count 57 is the participation in the criminal street gang, right? Or do they take them individually? And the reason why that became important, and was very smart again, the jury's very smart, is because count 57 charges specific statutes with regard to the criminal activity of a street gang. Because being in a gang itself is not illegal, right? But they charge possession of marijuana with intent to distribute, possession of codeine with intent to distribute, possession of cocaine, and possession of firearm during commission of a felony. Counts 59, 8, 59, 60, and 61 of this indictment. So the judge said, you can take them. You don't have to. You can take them all at once, but you have to prove them beyond a reasonable doubt individually, and you have to prove that intent to distribute with regard to the drug charges. So, good ruling, bad ruling, what does it mean? Tea leaves. I need tea leaves, Michael.
Oh, I think it's the right ruling. And I think it's good that the jury is conscientious enough to, that's a pretty sophisticated question.
Yes,
right?
Yeah. Right,
and,
very sophisticated.
Yeah, and again, I'm always wondering to what end, right? To what end are they trying to figure that out? Is it just one person who just isn't quite clicking, or is it somebody that has their heels dug in, and they are certain about one thing, and other jurors are saying, look, why don't you take a look at this, and maybe we can get the court's help on this other thing. Maybe that'll make the picture clearer for you. So, smart question. I just don't know to what end.
Okay, so we have a couple of smart comments and then one really smart question. Let me go in line. Jane Lawson says, they must have been the worst criminals because it's all attempted this, attempted that, attempted criminal activity, attempted. So that's a smart observation on that. And then also Alicia says, question, if the jury finds Yak willingly joined the conspiracy as alleged in the overt acts 56 and 59, does that put him in a conspiracy permanently?
Oh,
another sophisticated question here. Alicia, I think you're on that jury. I'm just kidding, because they'll come after us and they'll say, oh, you have a members on the jury. No, we're just giving you a compliment, because the jury seems to be so sophisticated and smart. What do you think, Michael? Or Michel Briand?
Mais oui. Remember that each of these events and the charges that spring from them are a moment in time. In theory, you can be in and out of a conspiracy. Not that there's conspiracy one. You could be in that or you're not in that. There could be conspiracy two. You're in that or you're not in that. You can't say, hey, I'm leaving the conspiracy after I've done things in furtherance of the conspiracy. That won't get you off the hook. If you've done something in furtherance of the alleged conspiracy, then you're in. So
unless you report it to law enforcement, right?
That's right.
That one exception, right?
So permanence is kind of a weird word when you look at it in the context of a conspiracy. So that's why there's so many co-conspirators that are charged in a more traditional case, not a RICO case, where you might have somebody who's the wheelman or wheelwoman, and you have the lookout. And at some point in the process, they say that this is not a great idea. I'm out, and they inform the cops. That's their only get out of jail free card, But at the point they start doing things to help that bank heist or whatever it may be, they've done things in furtherance of the conspiracy. And
but let's go one step further. It seems to me that, and the one thing that the defense counsel made a point of, and Doug made a point of, is no one ever got any monetary records of Jeffrey Williams. He's supposed to be the leader, right? The snake, the head of the snake of this group, right? You supposedly have cocaine or marijuana, you sell it, you're distributing it, you get the money from it, you put it back into the gang. It's like, and that's supposed to be helping the gang. But here there was no evidence that any money ever went to the head of the gang. Is that why it's a hybrid? Because they couldn't prove anything? I don't understand.
It sounds like a hybrid is not a case. And with Jeffrey Williams, they never really established that he was the head guy. They tried. They had witness after witness suggesting they somehow needed his permission, but it was never very clean. It was never very clear. And if they couldn't attach anything done at the lower level to money he received at the higher level, there's just no connection there. And that's why I think Brian Steele was so adamant that, we could have taken this thing to verdict and done very well. But there were so many overriding issues. Cobb County is no Rice Street, but it's still jail. He wasn't doing well. Let's face it, he wasn't doing well in jail after 2 years. And in his mind, in Jeffrey Williams' mind, I'll get out. I'm out. I'm on probation, which you and I have talked about in great detail, the landmines in that probation agreement.
Right.
But all he's thinking at that time is, I got to get the hell out of here. I can't survive.
Right. And they had the opportunity because of the whole idea of a mistrial that would have been granted, but it would have been granted without prejudice, which means that they'd still be in jail waiting for another year to go to trial, probably after the other 11 defendants are, and you never know what's going to happen. Alicia, thank you for being a huge fan watching the Hernandez trial. Yes, they're when we did that with our team, with Jose and Ron and all, we didn't tell everybody, but afterwards the court personnel came to us and said it's the most amazing trial team that they had ever seen, because it's very hard to get an acquittal of a defendant that was Aaron Hernandez, who had already been convicted of murder, which everyone knew about, and get him acquitted of a double homicide thereafter. But we had the facts on our side because we believed who the shooter was, and we presented that to the jury, and they obviously believed it too. So, sometimes you have to take that foray into those hard cases and win those hard cases for your client, and put the state to their burden that it's proof beyond a reasonable doubt. You're not going to run over everybody. And I think that's what the defense teams have done here. Okay. You're not going to run over of anybody. And yes, that cross of Bradley by Jose, what really was a lot of fun, wasn't it? Okay. So now we'll go back to this trial, but that's why I have such great respect.
There was a long question I was reading there. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Okay. No, you're not interrupting.
It disappeared, but it had to do with what the attorneys say is not evidence. But I can't see the question anymore.
Thank you, Jerome. No, I think I saw it. There you go. We talked a little bit of this, Jamie Heather, JD. She's also, a fellow lawyer person. I love it. I was curious to see your take on the jury question. The judge is instructing that, quote, what an attorney says is not evidence without stating the answers elicited are evidence, and jury determines credibility. Michael.
Okay, I'm trying. That's what I was trying to read it for, and then suss out what the nugget is.
Sus, Karen Reed. While he's thinking about his.
Don't get me started on Karen Reed. That case is totally off the rails.
When he's thinking about his answer next week, when he's back from being our correspondent overseas, doing some of these interviews we have for future things that are coming up. Karen Reed, there was a major motion filed on that, and also an attorney added to the defense team. I'm just throwing that out that we have a lot more to discuss. And also, one of the people that we interviewed on the show early on, before we became, when we were just doing this casually, Ty Tucker took a plea deal for time served. He's not going to face another murder charge. But these are cases we're covering, and we'll be back with you on those, because right now we want to stay on YSL, which is what you're all interested in.
Okay, so I'm not smart enough here. There's a little clarification I would need, because I think the question is, the court is saying, remember, anything an attorney says is not evidence. And generally that applies to opening statements, closing arguments, and even some questioning sometimes can be construed as, if the attorney does it right, kind of throwing a little evidence in there that really shouldn't be. It should come from the witness stand. I don't understand, though, why that would be an issue relating to the jury determining credibility. I mean, seems to me, if the jury understands that what the attorneys say is not evidence, then what they say is not evidence. What they elicit from the witnesses is all that really matters. So I'm sorry, I'm not sure exactly where we're going with this question. Help me out if you can.
Yes, Jamie. So Jamie, tell us how to pronounce your name. Jamie.
Looks like Jamie.
But while we're doing that, usually the judge follows up on that. What the attorneys say is not evidence, but use your own memories to determine what the evidence was related to that. Usually that's right. You've taken notes. You use your own recollection. That counts. But they were so specific. And what did Mr. Weinstein say? Right? They were just so specific with that, Michel Briand, that they really want to know if he admitted the crime for some reason.
I watched Doug's closing pretty closely. It was only about 45 minutes, so it was easy to take in. I don't remember him ever identifying the watch as Yak Gotti's. I just don't remember that. So maybe not a misspeaking moment, maybe just misinterpreted what he said. But I don't remember having heard that. But that's a very important, little nugget. So if the judge is telling these folks, look, you may have heard that, you may not have heard that, but if you did, ignore it because he's not giving you evidence. You got to think back to the testimony that focused on the watch from who?
Focus on the watch from Viverito. But it's interesting to me that that's where she was most animated. She was most animated on this, right? With the thing up and the your honor, right? Which to me that was it was like a flag that was something she was upset about. What does she want to say? That there was never in this trial where Yak Gotti was going to be the person who was owning a $500,000 watch. Right. As a matter of fact, they didn't even catch him in the house. He was outside the house when the police came. And that's why the charges for the drugs in the house got dismissed. So what? She's trying to say, come on, ridiculous. Just ridiculous.
Was that the time when Ms. Love was trying to figure out how to put her hand beside her head and her, did you
that was
see
another
that
one.
Part? That was a different time. It was so weird.
One.
It's like, she was afraid to mess up her due, or it seemed very weird.
Yeah. No, I mean, Jerome Street, I say what I think, and sometimes it's good for the prosecution, sometimes it's good for the defense. But let me tell you, because when you're a defense attorney, having been a prosecutor, you have to know where the prosecutor is going. You have to know what facts that are really facts that are against you and that have been proven against you. Although as a defense attorney, we teach there's no such thing as a bad fact. You break down that wall and you put those facts into your wall. It's my wall over there, not your wall, prosecutors. So that's what a good defense attorney will try to do. Never say there's a bad fact, but sometimes, and honestly, there is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. So what else have we had? Okay. Alicia, they wanted to use the watch at the house as a presence to knowingly possess the drugs, but the drugs were already dismissed. They were already dismissed because he wasn't caught inside the house.
Yeah.
They wanted to say that he was living in the house. And
that's where
right?
Doug was saying that it wasn't within his arm's reach, which is even better than, not in the house when he was in the house. If it's not within arm's reach, how is there any possession ever? And it's amazing to get a directed verdict on anything, but that was clean, and that was clean. Thanks to Ms. Viverito.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I went back and tried to listen to all of Doug's closing, and I thought he said the watch. Yeah. But you know what? Yeah, we all have problems sometimes with our hearing. His watch, the watch, whatever it was. That somebody on that jury wasn't sure whether he said it was his watch or the watch. So
clearly,
whatever we heard, somebody had to be clarified. So Jamie Heather said, "Sorry, there are limited characters." I know. Usually I type differently because of these. These nails are just like killers, right? As Michael Bryan and Jennifer will tell you. Sorry, they're limited. The judge said what attorney says isn't evidence. The watch issue. Yes, what the attorney says isn't evidence. But you're right. The judge didn't say then use your recollection as to what the evidence in the trial was. It's just that what the attorney says wasn't evidence. I don't think Doug really cared at that point, quite frankly.
No, I think the watch is a sexy part of the story, just because it's a $500,000 watch, and people are more concerned about where in the hell the watch is now than its actual connection and importance in terms of evidence for the case. But I understand that would be confusing if he puts it on Yak Gotti, if that's what you think you heard. Yeah, I'd want that clarified.
Yeah. So anyhow, so the jury had a chance to deliberate to 7, even though the judge told them she'd let them go at 3 if they wanted to. Now, some people are saying that means that they're not close to a verdict. Other people are saying, if they were close to a verdict, they would have gone to 7. I don't think it means anything. I don't think it means absolutely anything. By the way, a mixed check, you're so irreverent. You're just like us, to Linda and Michael. Would you all recommend every classes Hilton and Love teach to anyone? You don't have to answer. Well, I teach, of course, I go up every year generally, although I couldn't go last year to the Harvard Trial Advocacy Workshop. It's a 3-week course. I teach the first week, and then the first week is going to be Dave Arenberg of Florida State's Attorney, Ben Chu, a lot of people that you've seen watch high-profile cases, and we all teach. I would suggest they do have a course for lawyers. if you can get into it and afford it, which is always the problem with Harvard, is it's a very good course. But we try to teach young lawyers how to actually try a case and ask a proper question, like one in a cross-examination, one fact per question. Michael Bryant, let me ask you a question. You watched the trial. Your viewpoint is that there should be a not guilty, correct?
On all counts, as to all defendants?
Your viewpoint is there should be a not guilty, correct?
I can't answer that question. No, I can't answer that.
Right. See,
No,
there you
it's too
go.
vague.
At least you got him.
It's too vague.
Well, then you're gonna go back and you say, let's go to count one. Michael Bryant on the RICO charge. You watched the trial. Your viewpoint is that should be a not guilty, correct? He went out. His sound didn't happen. Look at that. That's one way. That's one way you don't answer in cross-examination. Okay. But you get my point. That's how you cross-examine somebody. You're supposed to pen them in. You're supposed to be testifying. And as Michael Bryant is looking for his sound, it's kind of ironic because he said, as you were all in this as you started, that he couldn't really hear me. Remember, he was having problems with my microphone. And then look what happens. It's a payback. He's got to cut himself. You see this? This is the French word. He did a little thing, by the way, for our viewers. You'll find it on our website about Marie Antoinette. And I think he's doing that because that was a guillotine, Marie Antoinette. So we're going to have to let Michael Bryant go. He will be back with us. He actually is on assignment. He is doing different things. If you join and become a member, you'll get some of his little travel logs for Justice Served TV early. But we're doing a number of things for next year. And then he was in Paris and he was in Budapest and Prague on some cases that we're trying to put together to try to do at the end of next year. It takes a long time, by the way, to do these cases. But all right, so from earlier, let me just answer a few questions before I let you go. It was Michael stands there looking like the Statue of Liberty. Okay, all right. Actually, we're going to wave bye-bye to him. Bye-bye, Michael. Okay. Wait, bye-bye to him. By the way, it's already almost 1:00 where he is, so you got to give him a lot of credit for being on Justice Served TV with all of you who are here early, and of course with our producer Jennifer, who's is almost midnight where she is. But anyhow, I don't know how long the jury is going to deliberate. I don't know whether they're going to have a quick verdict on Monday, and we may find out that maybe they had a verdict on Yak Gotti that they didn't come out and tell because no one ever told them that, if you have a verdict on one defendant, you can come out and say you have a verdict. So we may find out a lot of things on Monday. And then again, the jury may go a month and be deliberating there a month. We don't know, but we're going to be on it. We're going to be covering it, and we're going to be covering the next trial too. And then when Michael Bryant gets back, we'll be doing a number of episodes. As I said, not only on this, we'll have a whole wrap-up episode. We're going to probably be a 2-hour episode with a lot of clips from the trial. And we're also going to do an episode on updates of non-Syed case things happened today, the Karen Reed case, the other case we talked about, the murder case, and we'll see where we are. Now, if I had been voting, I would have voted not guilty for Yak Gotti already, but I'm not on that jury. A lot of you are on that jury, and we have to remember that 2 people did get killed. So it is a very important case, and people's lives lie in what happens next. So I'm Linda Kenny Baden. Thank you for joining us. If we didn't get to your questions, stay with us. We'll be back next Tuesday night, I believe, unless there's a verdict on Monday night, and we'll be answering more of your questions with us. Send them in between to us, to our email, to our account, post them here, put them on our X Twitter, put them on our Facebook page, whatever you want to do, and we'll try to get to all of your questions. In the meantime, become a member, but as Michael Bryant would say, do the right thing and like, subscribe, share, and notify. And I'll see you next time.